Do you ever feel bored? Obviously not right now. But how about the rest of the time? Because according to multiple studies, boredom is back in a big way. If there's one thing everyone hates, it's boredom. From streaming services with endless hours of content to an unyielding stream of social media updates to a portable rectangular device that contains all human knowledge and accomplishment, we've done all we can to banish boredom. So why are young people reporting an uptick in tedium?
People might experience boredom a bit more frequently because they might not know how to fill their time in sustainable ways. If we are used to always having our devices on hand, other hobbies might not come to our mind very quickly.
A US study that tracked 100,000 adolescents for nearly a decade noted a significant rise in boredom from 2011, with the trend more pronounced in girls than boys. A similar study in China saw a 14% rise in boredom among students between 2009 and 2020. Even Billie Eilish can't get through a song without losing interest. Experts say this may not be despite the onslaught of digital distractions, but because of them. An experiment by the University of Toronto asked 1,200 participants to watch online videos and swipe to the next or digitally switch whenever they felt bored.
Our findings suggest that attempts to avoid boredom through digital switching may sometimes inadvertently exacerbate it.
The internet and social media use taps into the brain's reward system, dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter that releases feel-good chemicals that's associated with things like shopping, sex and social interactions. If young people are constantly getting that hit of dopamine, that can ultimately leave them feeling drained and fatigued.
So, should we be constantly avoiding the dread of boredom, or does a little tedium have something to offer?
Is a journalist and a dad who has written about his own kids' struggle with boredom. Myke, are we looking at boredom the wrong way here? Should we actually be embracing boredom?
I think so. I think on some level, boredom is a seed of creativity. I think that no one is ever going to have a great idea if they're already being entertained. The brain is a searching engine, and if we're constantly feeding that on entertainment and other people's ideas, it's never going to actually find something new. And so it's partly that sense of creativity, but also the fact that being bored allows us to actually spend time with ourselves and turn that searching engine inwards and find out a bit more about ourselves.
So I'm interested though, because in that story we just heard about how teenagers today are getting bored by scrolling and swiping and continuing to look for that dopamine hit. Is that the same thing as the boredom that we had as kids, where there was literally nothing to do?
I think it is and it isn't. I mean, I remember that suffocating stillness when the TV was switched off when I was a kid. You know, I grew up in the 80s. And that sense almost of panic, you know, what do I do now? What do I do now? That sense of boredom is different, but I also think we're talking about two different kinds of boredom. One is being bored with something, and the other is just being bored because we have nothing to do. And I think that's the boredom that perhaps we romanticize or we remember from our own childhoods, where there simply was nothing to do and we were left to our own devices. Is part of
this story just ignoring the fact that actually, for kids, if you're bored and there's nothing to do inside, you go outside, then actually going outside's quite good for you? Like, I remember as a kid saying to my mum constantly, there's nothing to do, and her saying, go outside, find something to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's absolutely true. And I think that's complicated slightly by the fact that most people don't have the same size backyards that perhaps we did when we were growing up. And going outside suddenly seems a little more dangerous, a little more perilous than perhaps it seemed for our parents.
Oh, come on, these spoilt little kids today, they could all just, they could harden up a bit, couldn't they? They're all little snowflakes.
I don't think it's the kids we're talking about, I think it's the parents. I think that the pressure on parents, you leaving your child unsupervised for 30 seconds is, you know, inviting the newspaper to put you on the front page if something goes wrong. So I think there is that sense of panic about leaving our kids to be by themselves and be outside. But I also think you're right. I think that a cure to childhood boredom is actually helping kids be with themselves, be in their bodies, being aware of their bodies. And I think that the best way to do that is to be outside.
Sorry, Myke, this went on for more than 45 seconds, so I had to check my phone. I was wondering, though, because this has gone on for so long, could you do something interesting for the cameras now? I don't know, like do a dance, speak in an accent, say a swear word or something?
Well, I think this is a really excellent example of how people think about boredom. And there's that sense that we're so used to stimulus and entertainment, and the entertainment working so hard to reach us that we've lost that the sense of reward in chasing the entertainment ourselves, and actually realising that maybe rather than something fighting for our attention, we should be fighting to give something our attention.
So then do you allow yourself to be bored? I mean, do you chase that boredom in the way that other people are chasing entertainment?
I do. I absolutely do try to, and it's very hard to do. And we're in this weird situation now where you have to make a conscious decision to pursue boredom. It's so countercultural. It's choosing to be unproductive, to switch off. And in some ways, it's so simple as leaving my phone at home, leaving it in the other room, or actually just fighting that urge to do something. But I feel guilty about it, and I think that's another reason people do avoid choosing boredom. It's painful, and we feel we should obviously be doing something better because we are so time poor.
Well, Myke, this has been stimulating. Thank you.
Thank you.
You really enjoyed that, didn't you?
I did. I can't remember the last time I was bored, and that is depressing.
I know. I was reading this study, and it was saying that there's something so passive about the experience of scrolling. So you think you're being engaged, but you're not. And in fact, you can kind of predict what's going to happen because it's all part of an algorithm. Whereas if you walk outside, anything could happen. And that's what boredom is meant to do. It's to propel us and to invite us to create rather than just sit there and passively consume.
But do you get bored?
I try and practice it. I do. I reckon
Really?
it's
You
a
have
muscle.
a little baby at home and you
I
work
do,
full-time.
but you know what?
They're so boring, babies.
That's what I was going to say.
Bring nothing to the table.
Look after a baby for a day and you know boredom. And sometimes
Yes.
you're like, you've got the phone, you're like, oh, but you put it down.
But it's wholesome boredom.
It's wholesome boredom and it slows your brain down. I think that's probably good for us.